What we have here is Black Beauty zucchini growing in quail waste. Guten gardening, everybody. Well, as you can probably tell, I'm in the shade of our sour cherry tree here, just enjoying a few moments out of the sun. I've been working pretty hard today out in the garden, and it's another 80+ degree day here in Zone 5, Wisconsin. It's just been an incredibly warm and incredibly dry start to this season. I'm wondering how many of you are experiencing the same thing. It's just one day in the last 5 weeks that I can remember where we had a decent amount of rain. Besides that, it's been a lot of watering. And I always prefer if the water can come from the rain or our rain barrels, but you know, this is what we have to deal with, and we just got to keep things watered as much as they need to. Now, today's video is not going to focus in on that lack of rain. Instead, we're going to focus on some of what we're growing here at Guten Gardening. So let's get this garden tour started. And I'm gonna start here with our garlic. And it's one of the things that I'm getting more and more excited about as we go through the various stages of development. Now, we just did a video where we talked about harvesting our garlic scapes. One of the comments on that video actually inspired us to leave a couple of the scapes on so we could let those develop the whole way. It's also another indicator that our garlic's ready when those are standing straight up. So you can see the ones that we left on here, but this garlic is a couple of weeks away from harvest, and I couldn't be more excited. Now, on the other side of that 3x6 garlic bed, which is right over here, we have a 3x6 bed that's filled with beautiful broccoli plants that we started from seed. These are Waltham broccoli plants, and if you took part in our seed share, you got some of these seeds. Now, there are a couple of things about this spot that we chose specifically for broccoli and the rationale behind that I want you to know. First of all, you see how much shade I'm in right now? That's because we have this giant cherry tree, the sour cherry tree, overshadowing this bed. So this is a perfect spot for us to grow things that don't need full sun and need to be protected a little bit from the sun. And broccoli is a plant that likes cooler weather. And on top of that, what we have underneath the broccoli is a companion planting in the form of beets. Now, beets, similar to broccoli, enjoy cooler weather and that shade that we have that we're providing to our broccoli here. And on top of that, broccoli tends to feed pretty heavily on calcium and beets don't. And so they're a pretty good match together. So what we did was to come along and at different intervals in this bed, we did a multi-sowing of beets, which has been a really successful method for us in the past. I think they're getting along really nicely. All right, the next thing I'm going to show you is right behind me here, and I'm going to spend a minimal amount of time on it only because I want to do a longer video on it a little bit later. But what we have here is Black Beauty zucchini growing in quail waste. And this is semi-unfinished quail waste, meaning that we had it in the compost for about 6 months. We emptied it out because we needed more space. I mean, those birds, those quail really produce a lot of waste. A pile of it in our main garden space. So we decided to go ahead and try planting. And these Black Beauty zucchini are growing so well in just simple quail waste. But we'll talk more about that in a different video. Now, the raspberry plants that we have, the different varieties, are coming in really nicely. Behind me, we have a golden raspberry. But actually, what I want to talk about while I'm sitting right here is the fact that I have container after container of these tomato plants. And these are all volunteer tomatoes that were spread everywhere in our main garden space. So I took advantage of that. One, I collected a whole bunch of them because the idea is if they came back this season, in all likelihood, we'll get some pretty good plants out of these and maybe even some pretty good production. Plus, I don't know exactly which variety is which, because even though they're at a certain spot in the garden where we grew some plants last year, we had so many different tomato varieties, it'll be interesting to see which ones are which. So we'll do some transplanting with this later. But on top of that, I also took advantage of the situation. And what I did while I was transplanting was to place some of these at interval around some of our trellising. So all of the tomato plants that are planted in here so far are volunteer tomato plants. I'm really excited for that. Now, I've said it before. One, I love tomatoes, which I consider to be garden candy. But two, if you grow a tomato once, you're going to have tomatoes for the rest of your life. Now, at a couple spots in our garden, you're going to see some second-year brassicas. We have second-year kale, second-year kohlrabi, and second-year Brussels sprouts. We also have a second-year cabbage, but I think the rabbits got to most of the reason why we still have them, which is seeds for our upcoming seed share and seeds for next year, because second year brassicas is when you start to see seed development, and that means more seeds to grow next year's crop. Now, just out of curiosity, how many of you remember this plant that you see in front of you right now? Have you seen our video about it? It's an edible weed, and a lot of places it's not even considered a weed. Here, it's typically just one that you pick up and throw out. But if you didn't see our video on purslane, you gotta check it out. Yeah, I pulled off a leaf here of our purslane. It's really delicious, and I think it's something that's worth trying. Oh, it's like a blast of flavor. You know, we're not far enough into the season where I can just harvest whatever I want. There's not a lot of things that are just absolutely ready to go. So when I came out the other day, I was like, what can I come to that's going to provide me with some sustenance while I'm out here working? Well, you can't go wrong with some strawberry spinach that's everywhere in the garden. And then there's that purslane. So I got some snacks out here for sure. Now, there's going to be a video about our green stalks in the very near future because we have some pretty exciting announcements about those. But I want to show you some of what we've got started and what we're already growing in our green stalks so far. Now, the green stalk that is immediately behind me is a green stalk, which means we've planted all different varieties of lettuces, spinach. We also have some radishes in here, which, as you know, are great for the radish and also the greens. We've got different kales in here, and all of that we planted in the last 5 or 6 days, and we're already seeing some development starting out. But we have a couple of other green stalks that are farther along. Now, the green stalk I'm showing you right now is the one that we brought from our indoor growing area outdoors, and it is growing like gangbusters. I'll tell you what, we've got so many different varieties growing in these green stalks. It's crazy. Tons of different radishes, Swiss chard. We've got peppers, eggplant, beets. Look at the size of these beets, and our pepper plants are filled with blossoms that are about to explode. We're going to get a ton of peppers off these as well. And then this green stalk that's right behind me here is filled with 5 different varieties of sweet potatoes. And when we start doing our sweet potato content, believe me, we're going to give you a ton of updates on the different ways that we're growing sweet potatoes. This year, in fact, we have 10 different varieties of sweet potatoes that we're growing here at Guten Gardening. Now, we have lots more green stalks here, and again, some really cool announcements coming up in a future video. But that's not the only vertical gardening we're doing. We're also growing in our Vertical Ruth Stout style hay beds. And these are the beds that we made last year and grew potatoes and sweet potatoes in. And we're trying it again this year with the hope that we get even better results since the hay is starting to really decompose. We've added a whole bunch more to the top, but there's some really good decomposing matter down below. But right now we have 3 different varieties of sweet potatoes in each of these and some beautiful purple potatoes growing out the top. Now, you probably noticed with our Vertical Ruth Stout that those potatoes on top were old enough, mature enough, that they were about to form some flowers. You can see the beginnings of them. Well, that brings us to our blue containers here where we have some mega chip store-bought seed potatoes growing, where we said we would try an experiment where we remove the flowers from half of them and left the flowers on the other. So if you look at these potatoes, you can see what I'm talking about. We've removed flowers from 2 of the 4 blue bends here. And I'll tell you, I just came out here today and I removed some more. So it's not like it's a one-step process. It looks like you're gonna have to do that as many times as you see. You have to check on them to make sure if you're taking part in this experiment with us, that you're also removing the flowers as they come in. Now, if you didn't see that original video, I'll put a link to it in the description, and I'll also put a link in the description to the form that we asked people who wanted to participate in this experiment, because if now's the time that your flowers are coming in, it's the perfect time to take part. So if you want to be a part of our experiment to see if we can get bigger tubers from those potato plants where we remove the flowers, you can join us in that community experiment. Just check out the link below. Now, my plan is to do a full garden tour here in a couple of weeks so you can see everything, because there's plenty more I could show you, but I have limited time today. I want to end though with one more thing. We just did a video where we talked about creating a kind of hugelkultur style setup in our compost bins, and I want to show you what I've planted in here, because I've got some eggplant, I've got peppers, I've got cantaloupe, and the cantaloupe that we have in here works really well with some of this simple trellising behind here. It was easy to make. We've grown cantaloupe or watermelon here the last couple of years. So we just got this planted in here, and we can't wait to see how well this produces. Again, it's so nice to be able to use our compost, our unfinished compost, etc., for our garden. Well, there you go, a quick garden tour from here at Guten Gardening. For those of you on Team Potato or Team Sweet Potato, you better believe we're gonna have some great content coming up for you over the next couple of months. I'm very excited for that. I'm very excited to get the rest of the garden going here. We still got a lot to plant and a lot growing here. And it's so great to see our efforts starting to pay off. Hey, check out these black raspberries. They're still in that red stage, or getting red, but they're gonna be ripe pretty soon as well. And before you know it, we're gonna have so much food out here. It's gonna make all of the effort we're putting in now very much worthwhile. Folks, if you're gardening right now, let us know how things are going for you in the comments. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.